Chapter 1. The dreams faded like mist on an early fall morning. Real dreams, the kind you can feel, taste, and know you're there. She tried to hold the image of her 2 children, smiling, laughing. A park, green grass, swings, and happiness. Drake and Cass happy, swinging up and down, up and down. She wanted to pull her feelings close, hold them against her chest like she would her children. Warm sunshine, the smell of freshly mowed grass, the sound of laughter, all mixed in the comforting feeling of home and family. Real dreams, real memories, but dreams and memories nonetheless. The harder she tried to grasp the dream, the thinner, the more distant it became. She reached out for 10-year-old Drake, but his face lit up in playful laughter as he kept swinging, and she just couldn't seem to catch him. She watched him swing until finally all the pleasant feelings were gone. The trees, the green grass, the park were gone. Drake, his smile, his happiness were gone. Cass was gone, replaced by the cold of the sleep chamber and the oily, metallic smell of the transport ship. Captain Joyce Palmer groaned and fingered the open button for her chamber. The hiss of escaping gas clouded the air for a moment with a blue frozen mist. She forced herself to sit up and swing her legs over the edge. Around her, the machines of the transport vessel, Caliban, did their silent work. Slowly, she looked around, afraid of what she might see after 7 months. The control panels above each of the cold sleep chambers all showed green, and the auxiliary flight board at the front of the room was the same. Everything seemed normal and running, and she let the dread ease away, much like the dream had done. She looked down at her bare legs, and for just a moment she felt dizzy. She gripped the edge of the chamber with both hands, and it passed quickly. Just as it did every time she came out of the damned iceboxes. She hated cold sleep. She pulled in as large a breath as her lungs would allow, and then shivered. The cold had invaded every part of her body, and she hated it. She fought to bring back just a little of the feeling of the warm sunshine and the smell of the grass in the park. But the dream stayed just outside her grasp, and finally she gave up, taking another deep breath and letting the shaking cold overwhelm her for a moment. Finally, as the shivering passed, she glanced up again at an auxiliary flight board that showed the status of the ship and its location. She studied it for a moment. All lights green. It appeared they were dropping out of Einsteinian space right on schedule. No problems, at least that she could see. She took one more deep breath as beside her, Deegan, her co-pilot, raised the lid on his sleep chamber. Beyond Deegan was the chamber in which their only passenger, Mr. Cray, still slept. The lights on his chamber were also still green and showing progress in the wake-up cycle. "You all right, boss?" Deegan said without sitting up, his voice hoarse and thick, like he sounded after a hard night of drinking. She just nodded and rubbed her face. Unlike her own thin and trim body, Deegan was more of a jellyfish out of water. While she watched her weight and worked out daily, he ate far too much, drank too much, and never exercised. He had white, pasty skin, and the cold sleep of every trip really got to him. She told him that if he kept himself in better shape, it wouldn't be so bad, but he never listened. She slowly stood, the metal deck ice cold under her bare feet. She quickly slipped on her sandals and then stretched, loosening sore muscles in her shoulders and back. She wore only brief bikini underwear and a light tank top. Goosebumps formed on her brown skin as she fought to loosen the muscles and shake the chill from the cold sleep. Even though she was in the best condition she could maintain, it would still take her hours, even after a long hot shower and half an hour of exercise, to fully get beyond the chill. That was her pattern after cold sleep. It never seemed to vary, so she might as well get it started. She glanced again at the flight board. They were 6 hours out from Charon base. Just the thought of that name gave her chills. She hated it there almost as much as she hated cold sleep. She sighed. Last trip. She promised herself under her breath. She had more than enough time to take an extra hot shower after exercising. She had the feeling she was going to need it. She gathered up her brown cloth slacks, brown vest, and the Harley-Davidson baseball cap that held her long black hair out of her face. Then she moved over and looked down through the cover of the sleep chamber at Mr. Cray. He was on his back, clad only in his boxer shorts. He looked to be in good shape, with strong chest and arm muscles and a trim waist. His head lolled slightly to one side, and his mouth was partially open. Her guess was that in normal sleep, he snored. She caught herself hoping she would get the chance to find out. "Deegan," she said, patting the lid of Cray's chamber. "Make sure our guest gets up. We don't want him asleep for the big meeting with Professor Kleist." With a final glance at his solid chest and the bulge in his boxer shorts, she headed towards her cabin and her wonderfully warm shower. Behind her, she heard Deegan moan. "Yes, boss." Then there was an even louder moan as he sat up. On Charon base, in a small wood and metal-lined corridor carved out of solid rock years earlier by prisoners, 5 Marines in full battle armor gathered. Helmets locked on, faceplates up, automatic Kramer rifles slung over shoulders. Taser web rifles in their hands. They looked like they were ready to go into a war. And that's exactly what they were preparing to do. The corridor dead-ended into a metal airlock-style door. The white plates of the battle armor contrasted sharply with the brown carpet on the floor and the grey steel of the airlock. The corridor had a slight smell of sweat and fear, as it did before any mission. Sergeant Green, not the tallest of the 5 Marines, but by far the largest and most powerful in shoulder width and the huge size of his arms, waited until all were silent before he gave them their mission. "We're after an adult warrior, alive and intact. I know that stinks, but there's the drill." He made a point of looking around at the 3 men and Boone, the only woman left on his squad. No one answered, and he smiled to himself. They didn't like this shit any more than he did, but they would follow their orders, and that was what he needed at the moment. He was following his orders, and they needed to follow theirs if they planned on getting out of this alive. He went on. "Taser webs only. Kramer's slung, unless on my order. Is that understood?" Private McPhillips said, "Yes, sir," softly, and no one else moved. "Dylan, is the sound cannon ready?" "Warming up, sir. Just hope the thing works this time." "Don't we all?" Sergeant Green said. This was another stupid mission, but when the professor said to do something, they did it. That was their assignment, no matter how bad or wrong it was, or how many lives it cost them. "Let's do it. McPhillips, take the point. The rest of you, keep it tight." McPhillips turned and punched the open cycle on the airlock doors that divided the human areas of Charon base from the alien hive. Thick, hot air blasted the Marines as McPhillips quickly checked both sides of the passage ahead and then slowly moved forward, checking above the door and the ceiling down the rock corridor. Charon Base was not much more than a large hunk of solid rock orbiting a Class 3 yellow star in an elliptical orbit. Originally, it had been a government prison camp, used to hold the most dangerous criminals from Earth. The prisoners' jobs were to dig more tunnels, expand the base continuously with useless tunnel after useless tunnel. The rock was honeycombed with tunnels 15, sometimes 20 levels deep. Most of the prisoners had died doing their make-work job. After the alien invasion of Earth and its recapture, the government didn't have the money or the desire to ship prisoners out this far, so ZCT Corporation bought Charon Base and started the top-secret Project Chimera. A section of the old tunnels were then sealed off from the rest of the base, and 5 captured aliens and 1 queen were let loose to form the beginnings of a hive. Another small section near the surface was upgraded to the highest human living standards, and top scientists from around the inhabited planets were hired and brought in, along with a platoon of government marines to help deal with the bugs and to safeguard the government interest. The rest of the tunnels were left, forgotten for the most part. Professor John Kleist was put in charge of finding as many ways as possible to make a profit from the aliens. From the acid blood to the royal jelly. Everything. But Professor Kleist had taken the project beyond even the corporation's fondest dreams. And that progress had come at a high price, paid mostly by the lives of the Marines. Sergeant Green kicked in his suit's air filters as the thick, rotting alien smell filled the air. Someone once described an alien hive's odor as 10,000 rotten eggs frying in rancid grease. Green had done 100 missions into hives in the war since he had heard that description. Without fail, every time that smell hit him, he thought of that image. And then thought it wasn't a strong enough description. Not by far. Thank God for body armor and the filters. The 5 white armor-covered Marines moved forward slowly as the corridor widened beyond the human section and became a large rock tunnel after about 20 meters. It felt to Green like an old train tunnel, only with higher ceilings. McPhillips, at point, stepped gingerly around puddles of alien slime, picking a path 1 careful step at a time. The acid slime coated the walls and dripped from the ceiling, forming odd pockets of blackness. The Marines' lanterns couldn't penetrate those pockets. It was those pockets that were so dangerous. Aliens slept in those holes and could appear and strike without notice at lightning speed. "Stay alert," Green said, his voice suddenly sounding hollow in his headset, even to his own ears. McPhillips, with the shorter Dillon right behind him, continued to pick a careful path through the mess. The new battle armor was good, but it wasn't perfect. Enough of the acid, and it could be eaten right through to the skin. Green glanced back at Choi and Boone as the airlock slid closed behind them. There was a reason Boone was the last surviving woman in his platoon. She was as tough as nails and damn near as fast as a bug on reaction time. She and the red-headed, skinny Choi were inseparable, both being from New York, both being about the same age. The men kidded them about making love like rabbits, but it never seemed to get to them. They just went right ahead and did it, at all times of the day or night. "Watch the walls," he said to Boone, nodding his head to the right at some extra deep pockets of alien slime. "Choi, keep an eye on those corridors. We don't want one of the bastards getting in behind us." "You got it, sir," Choi said. Green took a deep breath and let it out slowly. His stomach was twisting up, but so far everything was standard. Another 30 slow, careful meters into the hive. Nothing but them moving. "I don't want to go much farther in than this," Green said. Behind him, the grey doors of the airlock seemed an impossible distance away. In front of him, McPhillips stopped but didn't turn around. "Dillon, any traces on the scanner?" "Blank as Choi's brain," Dillon said. "Nothing at all." The scream filled Green's headset. Oh God, no! He had heard screams like that far too often over the years. Instinctively, he dropped and spun, his rifle off his shoulder, up and aimed. "Boone! Cut it loose!" Choi's cry echoed with Boone's scream as the huge alien warrior dragged her up the wall towards its hole in the ceiling. Like the well-trained Marine that she was, Boone knew some tricks of her own. Kicking out with her boots at the alien's head and arms, she twisted in the alien's sharp claws. Right, then left, always moving. Twisting, trying to get an arm free from the alien's grasp, to get a shot at the bug's arm or head. Anything to get it to drop her. As if in the worst slow motion of a nightmare gone bad, Green watched in sick fascination, not daring to fire until he had a clear shot at the head or knees of the bug. Choi looked like he almost might have an open shot at the bug's legs in a second. Boone twisted to aim her taser web at the bug's head. She almost made it. But before she or Choi or anyone could get a shot off, the worst happened. Huge, saliva-filled outer jaws snapped open, and the second alien jaws from deep in its throat shot through Boone's armored helmet like it was so much tissue. Her final scream echoed and then died, like someone had cut off the power on a stereo. Pieces of her helmet, face, and brains exploded over the corridor, raining down on everyone, covering Choi in his lover's blood. Her body twitched in the alien's grasp, still fighting, even though her head was gone. The alien's smaller jaws retreated into its throat, pulling along the dome of Boone's brains and face. "No!" Choi screamed. Like all of them, he had his rifle unholstered, working for a shot at the alien that wouldn't leave Boone covered in acid blood. But now that didn't matter, and before Green could even react, Choi fired. His shot hit the bug head-on in the body with a full charge. The bug exploded like a kid's firecracker, raining acid down the walls and onto the corridor. Boone's body dropped to the stone floor, one hand and arm of the alien still attached around her waist. She bounced once among the remains of the bug's body and came to rest on her side, her back to the corridor, her hair filling the hole in the back of her helmet. Green reached Choi a second too late to stop him. "Hold your fire, goddammit!" He slapped Choi's gun aside. "Boone!" Choi said, and started towards her acid-soaked remains. Green held his arm. "She's gone, and now you might have killed us all." Green held on as Choi fought to pull away and go to Boone. "Sarge!" Dillon shouted. "I got signals! Readings coming in all over, from 3 sides!" There was a high-pitched, panicked sound to Dillon's voice, and McPhillips said, "Shit!" loud enough to echo in Green's headgear. "Ah, damn it!" Green shook Choi hard, snapping him around and away from the sight of Boone's body. "We just gave them all a wake-up call, and now they're coming down for breakfast. Get your ass ready to fight!" He glanced around at McPhillips and Dillon, then shouted, "Combat spacing front and rear! Hustle! Dillon, the sound cannon!" "Prepared and ready, sir. Max frequency, wide field focus." "Let's hope the damn thing works this time," Green said under his breath. Louder, he said, "Taser webs! Stand by!" It seemed like only a second before the corridor, the walls around them, the tunnels to the side of them, came alive with wave after wave of ugly, mad bugs. Every one of them 5 to 6 times their size. Green could hear the rustling of their movements even through his armor's shell. He'd always heard the old saying that if the aliens' rustlings and clickings were loud enough to penetrate armor, you were as good as dead, because there were so many of them. This time seemed like it wasn't going to be an exception to the rule. Green couldn't remember seeing so many bugs in one fight. Straight on, without the sound cannon, the 4 of them would never stand a chance. "Dylan, fire!" The long metal sound cannon looked more like an old bazooka from the Earth Wars than anything else. It seemed to jump slightly in Dylan's hand, but there was no sound, no explosion from its end. And from what seemed like an eternity, nothing happened. Green watched as Dylan focused on the dial on the top of the weapon, nodding, ignoring the certain death around him. The gun seemed to be aimed at nothing in particular. Around them, the air in the tight rock chamber seemed to be shimmering, as if waves of heat were coming off hot pavement. The alien saliva formations wavered in Green's eyes, but he knew it was nothing more than the surface effects of the sound cannon. It was working. He almost wanted to scream with joy. Every bug in the corridor froze, saliva dripping from wide mouths. "God, I love that thing," Green said, letting out the breath he was holding. "Damned if I know how it works, but when it does, it gets them every time." Somehow, Professor Kleist had discovered a weapon that got to the creature's nervous systems and froze them like so many ugly statues in an alien park. The problem was that it couldn't always be counted on, and very seldom worked for longer than 60 seconds. The professor kept promising he was working on making it better, more reliable, but in the meantime, Green had lost more than half his platoon. But this time, it looked like the sound cannon, as they all called it, had saved their lives. At least all but Boone's. He pointed to the biggest and closest warrior on the corridor wall. "Web that one and let's get out of here." Dylan's and McPhillips's 2 taser webs fired at the same moment, pulling the huge, stunned warrior off the wall with a loud, smacking thump. Surrounded in nets that not even the acid blood of the aliens or their super strength could eat through, it lay on the corridor floor, drooling. Beep, beep, beep. "Shit!" Dylan said as the sound echoed through the rock chamber like the timer of a bomb. Green knew that sound. It was the sound of their funeral if they didn't move damn fast. "Sarge!" Dylan managed to choke out, his voice trembling more than Green had ever heard it before. "This damn thing is malfunctioning! We've got about 30 seconds before it blows and sends us and this entire station into space." "Choi!" Green shouted at where the Marine stood over his lover's body. "Help with that bug! Now!" Beep, 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 beep. The sound echoed off the stone walls and the frozen aliens around them, increasing in tempo and matching Green's racing heart. He knew it was the sound of the clock ticking away their final seconds of life. Faster and faster with each beep. With a final look at Boone, Choi did as he was ordered. He turned and was beside McPhillips almost instantly, yanking on the webs around the bug. Dylan backed slowly towards the airlock holding the sound cannon. Green kept both his taser web in his right hand and his Kramer automatic rifle in his left, covering the frozen aliens as Choi and McPhillips dragged the stunned warrior down the corridor as fast as they could go. Beep, 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 beep. 15 seconds, Dylan said. I gotta shut it down or it'll blow. Hold on as long as you can, Green said. Then run. Beep, 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 beep. You're telling me? Dylan shouted back. Quickly, he was backing towards the entrance, and Green was matching him step for step. Beep, 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 beep. Shit! Not much longer! Hold it! Green shouted. 8, 7, 6! Hold it! The beeps had almost become one long scream, echoing off the slime formations and the stone walls. Another few seconds, and the explosion would destroy the entire base. I'm shutting it down! Green, still backing up beside Dylan, glanced around. Choi and McPhillips had the warrior to the airlock. Another few seconds, and they would be through and to safety. He and Dylan had backed to within 20 meters of the lock, but that might be 20 meters too far if the bugs around and in front of them reacted very fast. Dylan clicked off the cannon, stuffed the long tube under his arm, turned and ran. The silence in the corridor seemed as loud as the beeping. Green waited for just a moment as the bugs started to move, slowly at first, then angry as hell, before he also turned and ran behind Dylan, keeping right with him every step. Choi and McPhillips had the captured warrior through the airlock and had come back to the lock with taser webs aimed over the two running Marines. Green sucked in lungful after lungful of air and did his best to run as fast as he could, his body armor pounding every joint in his body. These suits just weren't meant for exercise. Ahead, Choi and McPhillips pointed tasers at him. He trusted them to be good shots, but he still didn't much like how they were aiming straight at him. Dylan cleared the airlock as McPhillips fired, barely missing Green and connecting with a bug that was too damn close behind him. Green figured at that moment that he was dead. His heart was pounding so hard that he felt like it might explode. That is, if a bug didn't grab him first. Choi punched the airlock close command, and the doors started to grind together. Green dove headfirst through the closing airlock, tumbling like a white ball of armor as Choi fired another taser at the closest bug. Green stopped his tumble and lay on the carpeted floor, face to face with the captured warrior, trying to catch his breath. Saliva dripped off the bug's open jaws, and Green caught a glimpse of its interior jaw in that black hole of a throat. It was aimed right at his head. He quickly scrambled to his feet and moved a few meters away, where he did his best to suck as much air as he could get into his lungs. Too close. Just too goddamn close.